friends, today we are going to start the various provisions in respect of the residential status. In fact, the income tax is payable in respect of the total income which has been earned during the previous year, and this total income is the income which has been determined as per the provisions of the Act. So it provides the basis for the determination of tax. Now what exactly is to be determined, I mean how that total income is to be determined, that has to be reckoned, that has to be related with the residential status of the person or the residential status of the SSC. It's possible that a person may be receiving some income in India, still he will not be subject to the tax in respect of that income. It is also possible that some of the incomes which he may be receiving outside India, still he will be asked to pay the tax. It means the residential status is going to determine the incident of tax, means the tax liability. So it forms a very, very important thing for the determination of tax for any person. As I just mentioned earlier also, that overall, if we just see the definition of person, there are 7 categories in respect of which we can classify the person. The categories are individuals, then HUF, firm, association of persons or body of individuals, company, local authority, and artificial juridical. It means these are the several entities or 7 categories which are included in the definition of person. So we'll have to determine the residential status in respect of each of these categories. We'll just start first from the residential status of individuals, means how to determine the residential status of an individual, whether he is resident in India or whether he is not resident in India. So we just try to understand what exactly we mean by the residential status of individuals. The residential status of individuals can be bifurcated or can be classified in 2 ways. Means individuals, he can be resident in India or he can be non-resident. Broadly, we can classify individual in 2 categories: resident in India and non-resident in India. Again, if a person is determined, yes, we have decided that he is a resident in India, then we can further subdivide him in resident and ordinarily resident and resident but not ordinarily resident. So if you have determined the status of the residential status of an individual as resident in India, yes, he is a resident in India, then you can further subclassify them in the resident or ordinary resident in India and resident but not ordinary resident of India. So that is the overall structure of determining the residential status in respect of individuals. Now we'll have to, first of all, we'll have to see the conditions. What are the conditions which make a person, which make an individual, whether he is a resident in India or he is non-resident in India. So once we have decided he is a resident in India, then we can further classify it whether he is a resident and ordinary resident in India or he is a resident but not ordinary resident in India. This particular part we will just see later on. First of all, we will have to determine what are the conditions, means what are the bases which make a person resident in India. So in order to make a person, individual person resident in India, he will have to satisfy one of the 2 conditions, basic conditions. These are called the basic conditions. The basic conditions are: number 1, he is in India for 182 or more days, during the previous year. It means if a person is in India for 182 days or more during the previous year, then he will be deemed as resident in India. This is one of the conditions, because there are 2 conditions. Or if he does not satisfy this condition, then we will have to put him another test. Second condition is that he is in India for 60 days during the previous year, and he has been in India and he has been for 365 or more days during 4 previous years immediately preceding the relevant previous year. It means if a person is in India during the previous year for 182 days or more, he will be treated as resident in India. Number 2, if he doesn't satisfy this condition, then he should satisfy this condition that he is in India for 60 days during the previous year. Number 1. Number 2, along with the 60 days, he should also be in India for 360 days or more during the 4 previous years immediately preceding the relevant previous year. It means if either of these two conditions is satisfied, then he will be deemed as a resident in India. Means he is a resident in India. If he does not satisfy any of these two conditions, then he will be deemed as non-resident Indian. So apart from that, we have got some exception in respect of clause B. It means it's possible this particular clause B, we have got some exception to it. What are those exceptions? We'll just try to say it. These are called the special. These are the special clauses, you can say. These are the special provisions which are given to the individuals. What are those special privileges? Number 1, if an individual is citizen of India. If an individual is citizen of India and this particular person, he goes abroad for the purpose of seeking employment, for the purpose of taking employment. So he goes there, and for this purpose, this 60 days period would be substituted by 182 days. Number 2, it means then if he is going abroad for the purpose of employment, then his stay in India should be at least for 182 days instead of 60 days. Number 2, if an individual is a member of a crew of the Indian ship, again this period of 60 days would be substituted by 182 days. So these are the special privileges which are given to the individuals who are citizens of India. Number 2, if an individual is either citizen of India or he is person of Indian origin. It means second condition is that if an individual is either a citizen of India or he is a person of Indian origin and he comes to India for a visit, then his stay in India should be for at least 182 days. It means again the day of 60 days they are substituted by 182 days. So if these conditions are there, then he will be deemed to be the resident in India. If he does not satisfy either of these two conditions, then straightway he would be a non-resident in India. So we just try to understand this particular concept by taking an example. We just look at the example. In this example, Mr. Amit is an Indian citizen who is appointed as a software engineer in Microsoft USA. He leaves India for the first time on 30th September 2003. He comes to India on a visit for 175 days. Determine the status of Mr. Amit for the assessment year 2007 and 2008. It means, first of all, we will have to consider two things. Number 1, Mr. Amit is a citizen of India. So, during the previous year, 2006-2007, relevant for assessment year 2007 and 2008, we will have to see whether he satisfies either of these two basic conditions or not. During the previous year, his visit to India, it means his stay in India has been only up to 175 days. Whereas his total stay in India during the previous year means 2006 and 2007, his stay in India should be at least for 182 days. So he does not satisfy one of the basic conditions. So in this case, he will be treated as non-resident Indian. Another example. Mr. Mohan, an Indian citizen, leaves India on 20th September 2006 after a stay in India to work as an officer of a company in Australia. Determine his residential status for the assessment year 2007-2008. For the purpose of determining his assessment year for 2007-2008, we will have to see the number of stay in India in respect of the previous year 2006-2007. So he was in India from 1st April 2006 to 20th September 2006. It means his total number of days during that particular period was just to the tune of 173 days, and he is just going to Australia to work as an officer of a company. It means he is just going there for the purpose of employment. So his stay in India during the previous year 2006 and 2007 should be for 182 days. So he does not satisfy the basic condition of 182 days, so he cannot be treated as a resident of India for the previous year 2006-2007, relevant for 2007 assessment year 2007-2008. So after having decided determined the residential status of a person, and when we have come to know that he is a resident in India, then again we'll have to determine whether he is a ordinary resident in India or resident but not ordinary resident in India. So it means a person will be deemed to be the ordinary resident in India only when he satisfies both these conditions. If both these conditions are satisfied, then he will be deemed as a resident and ordinary resident in India. If he does not satisfy both the conditions, then he will be resident but not ordinarily resident in India. Please mind it, both these conditions should be satisfied. If he satisfies one condition, still he will not be called as resident and ordinary resident in India. It means first condition is that number one, he is a resident in India for 2 years out of 10 previous year for the relevant previous year. It means if he has been resident in India for 2 years out of the 10 previous years relevant for the previous year, number one. Number two, he has been in India for 30 days during a period of 7 years immediately preceding the relevant previous year. It means if both the conditions are satisfied, then he will be regarded as resident and ordinary resident in India, and if he does not satisfy both these conditions, then he will be put under this category, resident but not ordinary resident in India. Our next topic for discussion on the residential status is the residential status of HUF or Hindu Undivided Family. How to determine the residential status of HUF? The Hindu Undivided Family shall be deemed to be resident in India if number one, either full or partial control management of HUF is situated in India. It means if the full or the partial control means it is possible that some of the control, the affairs of the HUF are being controlled partially in India and partially outside India, still that would be treated as resident HUF having the residential status. So it means either there should be full control or partial control. So some part of control should be there in India, then it will be deemed as the residential or resident HUF. However, if full control is outside India, it means no part of control lies in India, then it will be the non-resident. So what is the deciding line is that the control and management of HUF, some whether full or part control should be there in India, then it will be treated as the resident in India. It means while determining the status of the status of the HUF, whether it's a resident in India or non-resident in India, the status of the Karta is not important because it is the place from where the control of the management of HUF is being maintained. That's more important. So once you have decided that it's a resident in India, then you can further subdivide it into ordinarily resident in India, resident and ordinary resident in India, resident but not ordinarily resident in India. Now resident in India. So once we have categorized the HUF as a resident in India, then in order to determine the status whether it's a resident and ordinary resident in India or it's a resident but not ordinary resident in India, the HUF will have to pass the two tests. Number one, the Karta of HUF. Karta of HUF should be resident in India, for 2 years out of 10 previous years immediately preceding the relevant previous years. Number one. Number two, and he has been in India for 730 days during a period of 7 years immediately preceding the relevant previous year. If both these conditions are fulfilled by the Karta, then it will be deemed as resident and ordinary resident in India. What is more important, I just want to point out that in this case, full or partial control. Here, partial control means de facto control, actual control, not the right to control. Because it is possible that the Karta of the HUF might have delegated his powers to somebody. So, then the status of the HUF would be decided based on the place where this person to whom the powers have been delegated from where he is just controlling it. So that's more important. In fact, in determining the residential status of HUF, it should have a de facto control. De facto control means actual control is more important. That is the deciding point. That is more important, not the right to control. So actual control, that is more important, and right to control, that is not to be reckoned in deciding the residential status of HUF. That is the deciding point. So we'll just try to understand the residential status of an HUF by the following example. You just see the example. HUF is situated in Delhi. Its Karta Somnath, who is 85 years old, has delegated powers to his eldest son, Mr. Arjun. Mr. Somnath is in UK for his medical treatment and left India for the first time on 19th September 2005. Mr. Arjun has full control over affairs of HUF and he exercises partial control from India and partially from Dubai. Determining the residential status of HUF and Karta, Mr. Somnath, for the assessment year 2007-2008. In the said example, if you kindly see it carefully, that Mr. Somnath is a Karta. He is the head of the HUF and who is 85 years old. He has already left for UK for his medical treatment. It means he has just delegated the power to his eldest son, Mr. Arjun. So Mr. Arjun, he partially remains in India and partially remains outside India. So it means the HUF, it means de facto control is in the hands of his son. It means otherwise Mr. Somnath has got the right to control the HUF, but this particular right has been given to Mr. Arjun. So the status of the HUF would be reckoned with regard to the place from which the affairs of this HUF are being controlled by Mr. Arjun, that is his son. So in this case, we can see as far as the status of Mr. Somnath is concerned, status of the residential status in respect of Mr. Somnath, who was in UK during the previous year 2006-2007, I think he left for UK on 19th September. It means from 1st of April 2006 to 31st of March 2007, he was not in India. So we can straightway say, as far as residential status is concerned, for the previous year 2006-2007, relevant for the assessment year 2007-2008, he was non-resident. However, in respect of determining the status of Hindu undivided family, we have got that this HUF is being managed partially from India and partially from Dubai. So it means it would be deemed as resident in India. So we can see the answer, we can give the answer like that. So previous year, in respect to the previous year, the number of days that the first column is in respect of Mr. Somnath, he is having the non-resident status. So previous year 2005-2006, the HUF is having the residential status. So by that, I mean with that, we can see that in respect of all the years, it was having the residential status. Thank you.